In this video, we are going to talk about the Amazon biome, covering aspects such as the climate, water systems, terrain, soil, vegetation, among other things. So if you want to learn a little more about this rich biome, let's get into the video. Amazon. Hey guys, how's it going? I hope you're doing well. I'm Paulo, your geography teacher. As always, it's great to have you here with me on Geo Ilustrada. And this video is part of the Brazilian biome series. Today we're going to talk about the Amazon. First of all, let's start by talking about its location. The Amazon is the largest Brazilian biome, located in the northern region. But it's not limited to Brazil only. It's present in 9 countries in the northern part of South America, as you can see on the map. Besides the northern region, it is also present in parts of the central west and northeast regions, covering the following states: Acre, Amapá, Amazonas, Pará, Roraima, Rondônia, Mato Grosso, Maranhão, and Tocantins. Yeah, it's huge. Now, when it comes to climate, there's something you can't overlook, which is the fact that part of the Amazon region is crossed by the equator. But how does that impact the climate? It has a decisive impact. As you know, the equatorial zone is the hottest region on the planet, right? Because that's where the sun's rays hit with the greatest intensity. So, the climate of the Amazon region is basically a humid equatorial climate with high temperatures and high humidity almost all year round. Regarding temperature, it shows little variation, basically staying around an annual average of 25 degrees. And the rainfall, which is the amount of rain, is around 2,300 millimeters per year. Of course, this amount varies according to the different parts or regions of the Amazon rainforest. And all of this contributes to the Amazon rainforest having the greatest biodiversity in the world, as you can see in this illustration on your screen. In general, tropical forests have great biodiversity, including a large number of endemic species. That is, species that are only found in that specific region. Now let's talk about another extremely important subject, which is the Amazon's river system. And here the main highlight is the Amazon basin, which is the entire water catchment area, right, in short. And through this basin, an incredible 20% of the world's fresh water volume flows, approximately. And within the Amazon basin, the main highlight is the very famous Amazon River, which is simply the largest in the world in terms of water volume. It's also considered by many to be the longest river, right? Although some measurements put the Nile ahead of the Amazon when it comes to total length, the source of the Amazon River is there in the southern part of Peru, in the Andean region. Yeah, it doesn't start in Brazil. And the mouth, that is, where it flows out, is in the state of Pará, emptying into the Atlantic Ocean. But along its entire course, the Amazon River receives water from more than 1,000 tributaries. What is a tributary? They are smaller rivers that flow into the main river. These rivers are classified as blackwater rivers, clearwater rivers, and whitewater rivers. Blackwater rivers have a darker color due to the large presence of organic matter. Clearwater rivers have a lighter color, as the name suggests, because they have a low presence of organic matter and sediments. And whitewater rivers, also called muddy rivers, have a large presence of clay and sediments. That's why they have that color, kind of like mud. Of course, that's just a summary of hydrography, which is much more complex. Now let's talk about the relief of the Amazon. In general, the terrain in the Amazon region is not very high, almost always staying below 200 meters, with different landforms such as plateaus, plains, and depressions. However, even though it's generally low, the Amazon region has the highest peak in Brazil, which is the famous Pico da Neblina, located in the north of Amazonas, with an altitude of approximately 3,014 meters. 3,014 meters. Well, the vegetation of the Amazon rainforest has one essential characteristic we need to understand it as a whole. It has different features depending on periodic changes in river levels. What does that mean? Let's understand this. First of all, we have what's called the upland forest, which, as the name suggests, is far from the flood-prone areas, meaning it doesn't get flooded. And it will have a dense forest formation with large trees, right, exceeding 25 meters in height. Another relevant aspect of this vegetation is that it's called broadleaf vegetation, meaning it has large leaves, mainly to capture as much sunlight as possible. But at the same time, they also lose a lot of water. However, water is not a problem in the region, right? Besides the upland forest, we also have the so-called floodplain forest, which is periodically flooded according to the river flood cycles. And in general, it will have medium-sized vegetation that doesn't reach the same size as the upland forest. And the third type of formation we have in the Amazon rainforest is the so-called Igapo forests. And here they are usually located in lower areas. Therefore, they are permanently flooded. And because they are permanently flooded, you can imagine that the local vegetation adapts to these conditions. And here we will have shrubs, vines, mosses, and aquatic plants in general. Maybe the great symbol of this formation is the famous giant water lily, right? Now that we've talked about the vegetation, let's finally talk about the soil of the Amazon rainforest. So hang in there. We're almost done with the video, okay? About the soil of the Amazon rainforest, I'm going to tell you something that might surprise you, which is this. The soil in the Amazon, in general, is not very fertile. But how can it be not very fertile since there's all that vegetation, that huge forest formation? Well, that's explained by the process of soil leaching. What is leaching? It's basically the process of washing. In other words, because of the large volume of water, right, from rain and rivers, the soils are constantly being washed. And this water ends up carrying away a large part of the nutrients. But even so, the soil of the Amazon rainforest still has a lot of humus. What is humus? It's that organic material that's in the process of decomposing, that darker, almost black part that stays on top of the soil. But this decomposition of organic matter, the absorption by the plants, and the washing of the soil all happen very quickly, right? So there's a constant recycling of all this organic material. So even though the soil is generally not very fertile, all of this makes it possible for the forest to sustain itself, right? As I said at the beginning, this video is part of the series about Brazilian biomes. There's already a video on your screen that gives a big overview of all the Brazilian biomes, but I'm making a video for each biome. So there's also the playlist about Brazilian biomes on your screen, okay? For those of you who want to have a broader view of each one of them. So thanks for sticking with me this far. See you next time. Bye-bye.